Big news last week in the motocross gaming space as Motocross the Game finally had their Kickstarter fully backed. If you remember, it was $100,000 for their Kickstarter campaign, and they even said in the original post that they didn't need this Kickstarter campaign to be funded for the game to be released, but it would help reach their stretch goals a little bit faster. And now, thanks to over 1,200 backers, the campaign's not only been funded, but it's actually surpassed a lot of what they expected it to with that $100,000. So we're going to go ahead and break down a little bit about what that means today, and also talk about a ton of updates that they've posted in the last month or so about what we can expect from this game in 2025. So for starters, of course, I wanted to be more on the beat with this, but I had a child after this game was announced, so I haven't had the chance to really go in and talk about it too much. But the first thing is that they did thank all of their investors, basically. A big thank you was sent out in their Discord and, of course, as well on the Kickstarter campaign to everyone who donated. So massive thanks, of course, on behalf of all the people that did donate to fund, this project a little bit more. Again, it's more about reaching the stretch goals than it is about getting the game to actually come to life. It's going to happen regardless. But they were very happy to see this come through because there was a moment, or at least a few moments during the month time that they had this Kickstarter up that they thought it might not even happen. So in the end, it actually did work out in their favor. For those of you that might be confused about stretch goals, what that exactly means and what it has to do with this Kickstarter campaign, they laid out a roadmap on the Kickstarter to begin with of all the phases they've already completed. They've made it to phase 3 at this point. And next for them is expand the development team, which is part of getting funding for the Kickstarter in the first place. Now they can move on to early 2025, phase 4, which is getting multiplayer, alpha release for gold tier backers, and more information that's to be announced. They're hoping to get a gameplay trailer released in 2025 as well, so expect that right around the corner. And of course, a full release in the fall of 2025. Some of their stretch goals included getting crossplay to being part of the game from the start with that 200K mark, which they definitely could get to if people keep funding the Kickstarter now. Extra bike customization, additional game modes, real life tracks, freestyle tricks. A lot of stuff on here is already starting to kind of come around in the first place because, again, with them talking about additional real life tracks, they talk in the Kickstarter about licensing required to obtain official motocross and supercross tracks. Well, one of the things we're about to talk about that they actually announced during the Kickstarter kind of has to do with that, and they didn't need 500K to get there in the first place. So let's jump in and talk about all these different updates that they've had. So even if you're not a backer to the Kickstarter, you can follow along with a lot of these dev letter updates that they've been putting out, both through their Discord and on their Kickstarter campaign itself. This is on the Kickstarter campaign. They had a dev letter come out talking about the physics engine. They had a lot of the actual physics engineers of the game go out to California and learn more about Race Tech Suspension, which is one of the companies that, of course, is involved in the game. And so there's a whole thing in here about what they're trying to accomplish with the physics engine. I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of it necessarily, but I'll include links in the description for this and everything else we're going to go through today for you guys to learn more about it. But they really went into detail with their very first dev letter on all the markers that they're trying to hit to make sure that this game feels realistic and plays realistic as well. It's one thing to look a certain way aesthetically for a realistic game, but also when you go to online racing, you want it to actually play and be competitive, similar to what we see with real motocross. And they talked all in depth about this with their physics update from Dev Letter 1. So the second dev letter that they had was talking about customization and different aspects that you can customize on the bike, the appearance, the rider, and all that stuff like that. They had these mock-ups done of the MTG base rider that we saw in the announcement trailer, and then, of course, a couple kind of fun plays on mimicking real-life riders with these setups as well. So that's kind of cool how they showed off the customization aspect of it. But they also did detail that they hope to have real companies involved in the game as much as possible so that you can customize to your heart's content on pretty much any gear, bike setups that you may run in real life or that you want to run in the game. Their goal is to obviously get as much of that as possible. Their third update went really in detail on ground deformation, which is another thing that a lot of people have complained about with past titles and different games, especially when it comes to the simulation side, because somehow, some way, ground deformation in sim games has never really been up to the snuff that it probably should be. It's pretty good in MX bikes, and it's getting better, but it's not to the level everyone probably wants it to be. And in sim, it's taken it a very long time to even get kind of good. Obviously, all the arcade games to some degree try to do ground deformation, but it doesn't work realistically. And that's something that MTG really talked about, that they're trying to hit the nail on the head with. And you can see by a lot of these images here on your screen, some of these playthroughs that they've already done just to show the ground deformation and how these ruts look is very, very good. You know, there's tons of ruts in these corners. It seems like it all breaks down pretty nicely. Again, this isn't fully done from what I understand through gameplay itself. This is obviously some edited ruts, but just to show off that they plan to have a deformation system that can do what these images are basically showing that it should be able to do. And then on November 13th, which is now 13 days ago, the biggest announcement maybe so far of the game itself is that they have come to an agreement with the AMA Arena Cross series to be the official game of the series. And we've already posted on our social accounts that banners for MTG have been seen at Arena Cross events. But more or less what this was is just in 2024 and 2025, they plan to have the real Arena Cross tracks in the game and it be like a licensed official series through the game, which is cool because as we talked about with replicas, it may not have translated over right away if you couldn't get official licensing for different series. So this isn't Supercross, this isn't, Pro Motocross, MXGP, or WSX or anything like that yet, which I think a lot of people are hoping to see. But even to have official Arena Cross tracks in the game right from the start is going to be huge for a lot of players, I think, to be excited about. Just something that's real, not just a lot of custom tracks that will be fun to play, but maybe a bit repetitive in some sense, where when you get real tracks, you can kind of compare it to what we see in real life and see just how good this game actually can be. A week later, as they've been going kind of week by week with updates on their Kickstarter, they had a huge dev letter talking about their sound engine. And if you watched the trailer for MTG, you probably saw a lot of really cool aesthetics with the sound engine in the game already. And that has to do with some of the things that they've already been testing behind the scenes. So in this dev letter, they went into how they're going to try to mimic real life sounds into the RPM of the engine so that you can also not only hear what sounds like a real bike, but also when you're playing it, it sounds like you're going from bottom to top in an RPM range. You know when you need to shift, when the bike is going to be loaded and all those things like that. And we also got to see finally a few cool behind the scenes shots of them doing sound testing of, in this one, they're putting gloves on and putting helmets on, doing some road tests with trying to master the sound engine. You can see all the equipment that is attached to this bike that they're trying to get the most accurate sound right up to the exhaust level even with the game itself. And this is a 2-stroke bike that they're testing it on, but they also tested it on 4-stroke bikes as well. And they did this in a little enclosed container, of course, so that they could capture the sound without it being lost to noise ambience around it as well. And so they say at the bottom of this that their goal is simple. They are trying to create an audio experience that's as exhilarating as motocross itself. Every throttle twist, gear click, every battle for the whole shot should feel and sound exactly right. We're incredibly proud of what we're working on, and we can't wait for you to experience it yourself. So, this isn't even, we haven't seen gameplay. We haven't seen all this stuff that a lot of people are, wanting to see necessarily. But this gives you an insight behind the scenes already of how much work and effort is going into getting this right pretty much from the start. They don't want to have a launched game where the sounds aren't right and this isn't right and the physics aren't right. They want to kind of hit the nail on the head from day one and build a base platform that they can grow on top of, like MX Bikes and MX Sim has done over the years, where I feel like for the most part, console games haven't really done that. They've never taken a base platform and made it a lot better. MX vs. ATV Legends, I think, deserves a lot of credit for what they have been able to accomplish in a pretty short amount of time since their game has come out, and they continue to make updates to that as well. But MTG obviously is trying to start strong and just get better. And this is a sound update for them that they had put out basically a week ago, kind of detailing how they're trying to do that from day one. The next day after that, we got a few updates about what they're trying to do with dynamic weather in the game, and this shows off more of their compound that's already completed in the game. We already saw some screenshots of it from the ruts and the deformation system that we were talking about just a moment ago, but this one actually showed how dynamic weather will feature in the game. It affects the track and races in real time. Rain turns dirt into slick mud, while the summer heat bakes the track into hard-packed ground. Snow brings a whole new challenge with icy patches and unpredictable slides. The track evolves as you race, making every lap different, and you can see the visuals already that they're putting out with this is incredible. I mean, the appeal of these tracks to me to just want to load them up and play them already is very high, just to see what the rain looks like, how the sunset going through the trees. And like you can see, this shot and this shot are the same shot, just two different seasons, which again is something that, a few games do dynamic weather. MXGP 21, for example, on their compound had dynamic weather. A lot of the compounds in most of the Milestone games have some shape or form of dynamic weather. I'm not sure we've ever had snow back to completely dry, which is going to be kind of cool to see. But even MX Bikes of late, there's been some track creators that will release a track that is snowy or dry and give the vice versa of the other one. Of course, most recently is Flying Iron Horse Ranch by TFC. And it had a snow version of the track and a basic regular version, but that's not dynamic weather. This is completely different, where the weather will change throughout your gaming session, and then we'll suddenly have rain on the track, we'll have snow on the track, then it might dry up from the snow, the trees will still have leaves falling off of them, rains again, leaves are growing back, and then the track will start drying out again, and then look, it snows again. So it's kind of all over the board, but obviously it's very cool to see just the aesthetics of what this could look like, because, on top of the dynamic weather, I think a lot of editors and screenshotters and people like that are excited already at just how good this looks from screenshots, because it gives them hope that when the game comes out, the replay systems and other things that will be involved will make it so that edits will be taken to another level. They're already so high in MX Bikes with a lot of what people are able to accomplish with that, but I think that with Unreal 5 as an engine platform for this game, we'll be able to even take the next step further of that, of having some incredibly realistic looking screenshots and replay files of the game, and dynamic weather, I think, will certainly help that. So a few days ago, they talked about their online racing system, and this one I'm going to kind of go through very meticulously to talk about it, because of course the real reason, or a main reason of why they talked about this game in the first place, is they really wanted to cater to the potential for esports competitions. And while we have had esports competitions in MX Bikes, we have had racing series in MX Sim for decades now at this point, nothing has ever really fully got it right, because there's still netcode issues aplenty in MX Bikes, and there's still game and FPS issues with MX Sim. It'd be very hard to run a LAN event in MX Sim, and especially it'd be hard to get all the people there in the first place. But let's go into what they talked about with their online racing system. They're looking for a fun and fair online racing experience for all, and creating that experience that is fair and exciting. By combining real-time telemetry tracking and detailed ranking system, we can bring a unique approach to motocross racing that rewards skill, consistency, and clean competition. Sounds a lot like iRacing to me. Racing built on real-time telemetry. Unlike traditional racing games that rely on checkpoints, we utilize real-time telemetry data to track every move. This system ensures that racers are fair for everyone. Tracks in MTG are built using highly detailed digital maps. These maps define the exact track boundaries and classify areas as on track or off track. The game continuously monitors that exact position of each rider's wheels. If both wheels leave the on-track area, it's considered an off-track incident. So that's kind of interesting, right? Like you go off track and kind of immediately get penalized for it. I wonder if they'll be able to make it so that like you slow down. And looks like it actually says right here, when off-track incident takes place, the system calculates delta time, which compares the rider's performance to virtual prediction. If going off-track gives you an advantage, a time penalty is applied to level the playing field. For example, cutting a corner without gaining time earns an incident point, but no penalty. Gaining time from cutting a corner adds an incident point and a time penalty to your race result. That line 2, more or less the second part of line 2, is pretty much how MX Bikes and MX Sim work right now. You go off track for a predetermined amount of time. I don't know exactly MX Bike system, but MX Sim is if you skip so many timing gates and you are faster than the standard deviation time for most players through that gate section, they'll give you an added time penalty. So we call it cuts in MX Sim. Post-race, people will have 1.238 seconds of cuts or something like that. And that's how that is calculated based on standard deviation. MX Bikes is kind of similar, but it gives a very hard number, 2-second penalty, 5-second penalty based on how much time you're off track. So this one seems to be a little bit of all of that combined. And also when it comes to MX Bikes also has ranking systems now as well. This is kind of using that right to have an incident point if you're going off track a lot. I'm sure it'll affect like your behavior index and things like that. So all calculations happen on MTG servers, ensuring consistent enforcement of rules for all players. Real-time feedback from players, instant in-game notifications for off-track incidents and penalties. This real-time feedback helps players adjust their racing style. They're going to have seasons and player progression. So MTG will operate in 12-week seasons. At the end of each season, players will either be promoted or demoted based on their performance. There's also a special week 13 between seasons where players can enjoy fun events and explore new updates. That's basically the quarterly system. There's 13 times 4 gets you to 52 weeks in a year. So they're going to have quarters, which is kind of similar to I play Trackmania, and they do fall, spring, winter, and summer campaigns, and I think that's going to be very similar to what we'll see in MTG for how they do their racing system. The license categories are rookie, amateur, pro-am, semi-pro, and pro. Looks like rookie is 125 two-stroke only, amateur is 125 two-stroke and 254 stroke. Pro-am and semi-pro, you can pretty much race everything, and then pro is 254 stroke and 450 cc stroke. 4-stroke only. You can practice with your bike or practice in non-ranked mode, but rank competition is tied to your license. So very interesting there. Clean racing is rewarded, and here's how it works. It observes how safe and consistent you are during races. Starting at 2.5, your CR can rise as high as 4.99. Mistakes like going off track, crashing, or making heavy contact with other riders reduce your CR, while clean racing improves it. Again, extremely similar to safety rating when it comes to iRacing. Incidents with other drivers, cutting the track, hitting the wall, lowers your safety rating. If you have clean races consistently, it ups it. So that's pretty much kind of the same exact thing. You'll be demoted if you you'll risk demotion if you go below 2, and you can achieve or if you achieve a CR above 4, you can jump to the next license level immediately without having to wait for the season to end. So that's kind of cool as well. You could maybe improve from being in, let's say, semi-pro and you want to go to pro before the season's over. If you hit that next echelon, you can just choose to jump up, which is very cool how that's going to work. There's also a race rating and competitive matchmaking, which measures your competitiveness and becomes important at higher licenses. It changes based on race results and the skill of your opponents. Finishing better than expected boosts your race rating, while weaker performance reduces. Again, very similar to in Call of Duty, prestiging and going up levels, and that gets you higher ranking and matchmaking against other competitors. I'm sure people will nerf this system and probably have Smurf accounts, but hopefully, for the most part, this stays pretty clean and well-balanced, which should be very excited for online racing in MTG. And their most recent update came a couple days ago. It talks about stamina system and realistic crashing. I'm not going to get too much into this, but it's basically an injury system to a degree, which we've also seen now in Monster Energy Supercross the Game has kind of had this as well. And so when you fall, it'll, kind of give you like real injuries to a degree. It says experience true to life crashes where balance, reflex, and recovery time matter, pushing you to the master of the art, staying in control and pushing the limits, just like in the real sport. And it just shows a little screenshot here of 62.5%. So I'm assuming that, as the race goes on, your rider will get more tired. That'll affect what you can do and control the bike, which we've never had before. That's kind of cool. But then, obviously, realistic crashes and all that stuff like that will affect how that is throughout the race. And if you have a big one, I would probably have to assume that it may end a race for you sometimes, which is kind of unique. We've only really kind of had that at MX Sim with the knockout system, which for those of you that don't know, back in like 2013, MX Sim tried to introduce something where if you had a heavy enough crash, the screen would go completely black. And while that was cool because in essence, it made it so that you crashed and then were knocked unconscious, it struggled because it left riders in the middle of the track all the time. And so when you try to do a competitive online race, someone would get knocked out and then just be sitting in the middle of the track for the rest of the race, or 30 seconds or a minute or however long the knockout lasted for. So I hope with this system, to some degree, with whatever they do with the realistic crash system, allows for, if you do get an injury, it either like automatically moves you off the track or maybe just pulls you out of the race system completely and like you end up back in like the lobby or something. I'm not sure how they plan to do that, but still just kind of cool to see where their head is at and what they're thinking about doing with that. And that's kind of all the information at this point in time in Motocross the Game. The Kickstarter goal has been reached. We have a ton of dev letters and information coming out pretty much daily. They said it was going to be weekly, and it's pretty much been every other day they've been putting stuff out. So we'll continue from this point on trying to update you guys more consistently with these updates as they become available. Obviously, as this is a moto gaming news channel, we're going to have updates on other stuff as well, but this is the latest with MTG. If you guys have any questions or comments, please head down in the comment section below. Hope you guys enjoyed this video detailing what's happened in a month's time, and we'll come back soon and talk more about this upcoming game for 2025. So thanks guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one. So long for now.